emphasized, all arrests are not equal. A murder investigation consumes far more resources, of course, than a marijuana possession arrest on the highway. The social costs of marijuana arrests are also considerable. Just as young people account for a large proportion of marijuana users, they are also overrepresented in marijuana arrests. The arrest rate for males aged 15 to 19 for possession is 1,675 per 100,000. For males 20 to 24, the arrest rate is 1,614. Now again, compared to the overall arrest rate of about 230. Males between the ages of 15 and 24 account for 50% of the marijuana possession arrests in Indiana. And when females are included, the age group accounts for 60% of all marijuana possession arrests. And by the way, men get arrested for marijuana offenses at a substantially higher rate than women. 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 8 to 1. It's predominantly young men who are arrested for this offense. Many, if not most, of these individuals are otherwise law-abiding citizens, and I suggest that if not for this one offense, they would otherwise not have any contact with the criminal justice system. Marijuana law enforcement also has a disproportionate effect on blacks. As my research was reported earlier, national survey data does not show any significant differences in marijuana usage between blacks and whites. In fact, young whites use marijuana at a slightly higher prevalence than young blacks. However, in Indiana, as is evident nationwide and as is evident in almost every jurisdiction in the United States, blacks are overrepresented in marijuana arrests. This is not unique to Indiana. This is a characteristic of marijuana arrests everywhere. Urban areas, rural areas, north, south, east, west. Blacks account for 9.6% of the population in Indiana, according to the U.S. Census. In 2008, they accounted for 31% of marijuana possession arrests in the state. The arrest rate for whites for marijuana possession was 176 per 100,000. For blacks, it was 726, 4 times greater. And while we're on this topic, it's frequently said that, well, the number of admissions to drug treatment has been increasing, and that's an indicator of how dangerous marijuana use is. This is sort of a circular and disingenuous argument because in Indiana, for example, in 2007, 2/3 of all drug treatment admissions for marijuana were referrals from the criminal justice system. The courts have long recognized the value of diversion and have included drug treatment as a condition of release or a condition of parole, or probation. And people agree to seek treatment whether they need it or not because it beats going to jail. Federal data on drug treatment admissions indicates that less than half the people admitted to drug treatment for marijuana actually meet the formal standards of drug dependence with respect to marijuana. Now, last February, there were several news accounts in Indiana about a seizure of marijuana in South Bend on the toll road. A California man was stopped on the toll road for following a car too closely. The police obtained a warrant. They found 100 pounds of marijuana, and they valued this at $5,000 a pound. The resulting headlines publicized the seizure of $500,000 worth of marijuana. As I said, self-evident, obvious, it's a valuable commodity. And by the way, every press release that law enforcement releases that touts the value of marijuana encourages individuals to enter the business to take advantage of this lucrative commerce. Profit potential fuels the availability of marijuana, especially to teenagers. It promotes new and ever-present and unregulated distribution channels, and it encourages people to cultivate the drug in quantities both large and small. Now, one indication of the attraction of this illegal market is how many marijuana plants are seized every year. And here, too, we have signs of an expanding and growing market. In 2005, in Indiana, DEA data, 35,000 cultivated marijuana plants seized. Not wild hemp, which you all are familiar with, but cultivated marijuana. 35,000 plants, 2005. 2010, that increases 72% to 60,000 plants. Number of plots, 2005, number of plots, 885. 2010, up 40%, 1,246. Number of outdoor plants, 31,000, up 60% to 50,000. The number of indoor grow rooms, this is very important, increased from 143 to 240, that's 68%. The number of indoor plants went from 4,100 to over 11,000 in this period, an increase of 177%. Now, during this time, arrests for marijuana cultivation went up. Arrests associated with these seizures only grew 21%, from 714 to 862. Now, how much marijuana is consumed in the United States and what is its retail value? I have an estimate, and I'll share it with you, but first I want to criticize my own work. All we have to go on are government reports, and the government's been accused of inflating the amount of marijuana on the market in order to justify funding for law enforcement, for interdiction, for eradication, what have you. There are problems reconciling incomplete and scanty data about marijuana usage with the government's reports on how much marijuana is on the market. Also, people that have done research on tobacco usage have discovered that people mislead data collectors about their use of tobacco. And these experts have argued that tobacco usage data should be inflated by 25% to compensate for this deception. So reports on the extent of marijuana use should be interpreted as a minimum estimate. And even so, contemporary surveys don't give us data on how much pot people smoke. But one can only work with the data that is available. So my report on the fiscal costs of marijuana, which is in that green packet, sought to examine all the available data on usage, on price, on the availability of marijuana, and give an estimate of marijuana's total retail value, and to estimate the fiscal cost of that money being diverted from the taxable economy, using an estimate of gross domestic product, that is how much of the GDP goes into tax revenue. So government reports from ONDCP, Library of Congress, other sources indicate the supply of marijuana in the entire country is 14,000 metric tons, which is about 31 million pounds. Various price indexes I reconcile in the report. I use $7.87 a gram. That's about $3,570 a pound. Overall retail value nationally, marijuana, the rather large figure of $113 billion. Now, I'll tell you right now, Jeff Myron at Harvard, he has a lower estimate of this market. He has the low conservative estimate. I have the higher, more liberal estimate, if you will. He takes a more, well, not only conservative, but he bases his estimate more tightly on usage data. I base mine more so on supply data. Certainly the real value is somewhere in between there, and I stand by my figure, and you can see my report. I have substantial documentation of it. But again, we have limited data. Now, when I prepared this study, the Office of Management and Budget estimated that 29% of gross domestic product ends up as tax revenue for local, state, federal government. Using that, the marijuana market deprives taxpayers of $31 billion annually. Now, here's a rough and hopefully easy model, estimate of the magnitude of the marijuana market in Indiana. And here I actually get closer to some of Jeff Myron's figures. Using the latest data from 2008, 535,000 annual users. Let's just, to make this simple, assume that they smoke 2 grams of marijuana a week. Now, that might be 2 to 3 marijuana cigarettes. Now, some people smoke a lot. Some people don't smoke but a couple of pinches here or there. It varies. Some smoke every day. Some smoke once a week. Just simplify all that. 535,000 annual